The podcast host, one of the biggest mistakes is they just don't go deeper. I think that if they, you might have a set of questions ahead of time, you ask a question, and then you move on to the next one. I think there's always opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and to ask for understanding and clarification. That's one thing that I.
So the big question is this: how these entrepreneurs who started from scratch and had no idea how to sell or market their products or services online and then later on made over 6 figures, 7 figures, or even 8 figures, became best in their niches and found their dream customers to sell. My name is RJ Ahmed, and find this all out in our Interviews with Entrepreneurs show. I interviewed these entrepreneurs and tried to pick their brain of how they actually did that and how they took their business as well as their life to the next level. This podcast is all about the entrepreneurs who strive so hard to become super awesome in their niches. Welcome to Interviews with Entrepreneurs. Welcome to Interviews with Entrepreneurs show, where we interview entrepreneurs who are super awesome in their niches. And guys, we are back again with another special guest on our show. This guy is actually somebody who I've been watching when I started my podcast, almost like 2.5 years ago, back in like 2020. The journey has been insane. Anytime I search about any problem I've been facing around podcast, I go to YouTube, search around that stuff, and I watch this man's content. So today's guest is Pat Flynn. Pat Flynn is an author and the host of a pretty well-known podcast, which is called Smart Passive Income, where he teaches people out there how to get success without killing yourself in the business process. He have multiple podcasts, which is amazing. Not only that, he have collectively over 80 million downloads, which is awesome. He's been, I would say, like good in so many things out there. He have a Pokemon based YouTube channel out there. We're gonna talk about all of these diversification as well. He's launched multiple products as well. So please welcome today, Pat Flynn. Hey Pat,
Hey,
thank you so much
well,
for being on the show today.
thank you, RJ. Thank you for that wonderful intro. Excited for the chat. We have a lot of
Yep.
things we could talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, truly appreciate it. So I want to know a quick, brief introduction out there. Like, if people lived under the rock and they don't know about like how the journey you have been like for the past almost like more than 15 years, like can you like walk us a little bit of like brief introduction, like how the journey was been for you?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to 2008. I was on my way to becoming an architect, and in 2008 in the U.S., the recession happened, and I lost my
Yes.
job. And looking back, that was actually a really pivotal moment in my life because that allowed me to explore what else was out there. If I didn't get laid off, I promise you, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I ended up building a website to help people pass an architecture exam, one that I took myself pretty recently before I got let go, and realized that there wasn't that many resources about it. So I decided to step forward and create that resource. And within a short period of time, I would say maybe 4 to 5 months, I started to get recognized. It started to get shared. It started to rank in Google, and a lot of people found it. And it was at that time that I learned that you could publish something on your own. You don't have to go through a traditional publishing route in order to
Yeah.
provide value and create something. So I created a PDF file study guide. I sold it on the website. And in the first month when I sold it at the end of 2008, I'd made almost $8,000 in product sales for a digital
Wow.
product. It wasn't even a physical product. So it was all automated. A person can come to the website, purchase the ebook, and then they would get it downloaded immediately. And then I would see money in the PayPal account. And this thing started to grow and grow and grow to a point where in March of 2009, uh, the website was generating $30,000 in a single month at that point. And, a lot of people
That's
were asking me
amazing.
like, how did you do that? Can you show me? And I said, well, there's a lot and I'm making a lot of mistakes, but sure, I'll build a second website to document what was happening and what was going well, what was not going well. And that's what eventually became smartpassiveincome.com. And that's the website that most people know me from now. It started as a blog, then it became a YouTube channel, and then a podcast. And the podcast has been really the catapult that launched my entrepreneurial career to help other people with their own businesses and their creative work. And so since then, I've written books, I've been on stages, and I have this amazing business now. And I still do the same thing. I still build new businesses kind of publicly and show people the ins and outs of it, what goes
Yeah.
right, what goes wrong. My latest, well, a couple of years ago, I invented something and I shared that process. It's called a switch pod. It's like a tripod for travel vloggers. And then my next project after that, which I'm in the middle of right now, is a Pokemon YouTube channel that is doing really well. And I'm having so much fun. I almost feel like a kid again. So A lot of things. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. When you talk about the Pokemon channel out there, it's funny. Like when I was telling my audience, like I'm getting like Pat Flynn, and they were, they heard about that exact same thing. Their kids were like, "Isn't that like Pat Flynn, that Pokemon guy?" Like even the kids got to know, or like in a different format. Like we're gonna talk about that further as well. But tell me about how you thought about like, okay, podcast is gonna be my thing. That as you mentioned, like catapult all of the things out there later
Mm.
down the road, like how you thought about like, yeah, this is gonna be my thing.
Well, I didn't know it was going to be the thing, but I definitely wanted to see if that was possible. A podcast was really important to me because when I got laid off in 2008, it was a podcast, a different podcast that I connected with and that taught me all the stuff about business. It was called Internet Business Mastery. It's not around anymore, or for a long time they've stopped publishing episodes. But the two hosts, Jeremy and Jason, I felt like they knew exactly what I was going through. I felt like they had the roadmap for me. And because a podcast helped me get my start, I always knew, well, I want to do a podcast too, because I know firsthand how it can help others. So in
Yeah.
late 2008, right as Smart Passive Income was starting, I bought a microphone, I bought all this equipment, and I was ready to start my podcast. And that was at the end of 2008. Well, my first episode didn't come out till mid 2010, so a year and a half later. So my microphone that I
Mm.
bought, the box was just collecting dust. And the reason why I didn't create the podcast initially, even though I bought all the equipment, was because I was just scared. It was much easier for me to write and sort of hide behind my keyboard than put my voice out there. Even on the YouTube channel, I never put my face on the channel initially, but with the podcast, every time I would try to start, I would say, "Oh, this is hard," or I'd make all these excuses. "Oh, nobody's gonna like this," and so I just always went back to the blog and wrote instead. And I only wish that I had the courage to start sooner because it really was the thing that put me on the map. The podcast, especially in 2010, there weren't too many, and the quality that I could bring was something different than what was available.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So like what do you think about, since you've been in the space for almost like 15 years, I'm super curious to ask that what was the thing that made you relevant for the past 15 years? Because a guy like who survived for the past 15 years definitely do have the plan to survive, for the next decade or more. Like
Yeah.
what's your thought around that?
That's a great question. I think it all comes down to the ability for me to have conversations and listen because things are going to change. I mean, 15 years, especially in the online space, is a very long time. And if I had just done the same thing that I
100%.
did initially, I would not be where I'm at today. It is the connection to the audience that has been the most important thing because they guide me on what their interests are or what they have questions about. And that supports the content that I then create. And so, how do I stay relevant? I make sure that I'm relevant, right? By connecting with that audience and understanding what they might need help with. And that also includes experimentation, trying new things, not being complacent, and stepping outside of my comfort zone to try things. And I think the other part is like as I try these things, like the invention or this Pokemon YouTube channel, and I've done other things that didn't go well. Either way, it's always fun to kind of come along on the ride and watch what happens. And the lessons that I could teach from that are going to be relevant no matter what. So that's really the main thing. Just who is my audience and how are they changing? Well, then I should change as well.
That's really interesting. And speaking of like podcasts, as you mentioned, I want to know your personal thoughts. You've done a lot of podcasts. You've been on a lot of podcasts. My personal thought is, when a podcast host get on podcast, that's a different way of things going on because like what's going on in the host mind or how the host is articulating the questions. A lot of
Right.
things going on in that perspective. So, like, what do you think is a common mistake a podcast host makes while interviewing with a guest? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think the podcast host, the one of the biggest mistakes is they just don't go deeper. I think that if they, you might have a set of questions ahead of time, you ask a question and then you move on to the next one. I think there's always opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and to ask for understanding and clarification. That's one thing that I've learned with my show is that oftentimes the gold is underneath the ground. You have to get below the surface to find all the good parts because if you just stay with those surface level questions, every other podcaster who interviews that person is basically going to ask the same questions and get the same answer. So your podcast is going to be no better than those other ones. But when you have a curiosity and you go dig deeper, that's when a lot of that really good information and those stories can come out. And that's part two of my answer is like not just getting the answer, but getting the story behind the answer. Right. And story for a listener is what transforms. It's what is relevant. It's what's memorable. It's what gets shared. And the job of the host is to just not get the right answers, but also frame those answers in a way that is memorable and exciting. And that is where the storytelling can come from. And a lot of hosts overlook that.
Yeah. So like it means like avoiding generic questions and like you get the answer, just move on the next question and things like that. Like most people should have to avoid those things out there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. I think again, the way that I think about it when I approach an interview is just be curious. If you can be genuinely curious, then you will be just as curious as your audience, and you won't let an answer um, be okay enough if you don't understand it yourself and you're still curious. So you dig deeper, right? So you just don't want to settle for answers sometimes. And I'm not saying you have to be in an investigator and put
Yeah.
somebody on the spot and interrogate them, but you do want to know why did that happen or how did you feel and all those other things that are often left out of the original answers.
Got it. Got it. That's amazing. Well, you're definitely one of those people out there that you mentioned, even in the start of your story, that you were kind of like afraid in the initial start to get on camera, to start doing podcasts. It took you almost like a couple of years
Yeah,
to be start doing podcasts and all that. A lot of people are like, hey, we're good in the back end. We don't want to come to front end out there and things like that. And they come and go silently.
yeah,
They they,
yeah.
they weren't anywhere in public. So what could be your possible advice that could potentially let them to understand, like, it's never been about being in the back end, not visible to the people out there, but they should instead go up front, show themselves into the public so that people could relate even further.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to forcefully put yourself out there. Like, honestly, if you know that your superpower is being on the back end and fixing those things and creating those things without putting your face, like you don't have to. There are very successful people who are behind the scenes, if you will.
Hmm.
But oftentimes those people succeed when they connect with somebody who is front facing or partner with somebody who is front facing. And the reason that's important is because people connect with other people, right? People
Yeah.
don't make friends with words. People don't make friends with a video. People make friends with the person on the other end of those things or the person who's speaking on a podcast, right? So the more that you put yourself out there, the more there is for people to connect with, right? And again, you don't have to put your
Yeah.
whole self out there. Everybody has a different comfort level for what makes sense for them, but especially today with so much noise and so much information, just the information alone is not going to be enough. I mean, we're suffering from too much information now. So what is the differentiator that we do have? It's you. You're the only person like you out there. And as I often say, your vibe will attract your tribe. And sure, when you put
Love
yourself
it.
out there, maybe you're weird and quirky. Okay, you're weird and quirky. You're different from other people out there, and some people are gonna love that about you, right? I have some people who come to me and they're like, Pat, I want to start a podcast, but I have a really thick accent, and you can understand them, but they're kind of self conscious about the fact that they have a really thick accent, and I'm like, just put okay, so now people are going to go, oh, it's so and so with the really thick accent, but he provides so much value and so much content. But I just love how he just brings it in a different way because that's him, and I can connect with that. And those are the things that people share, is those unique things, right? It's like when you meet somebody in person at an event, for example, it's very surface level, those conversations that are happening, like, where are you from? What do you do? Blah, 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 blah. But once one of you shares something that the other person has an interest in, like maybe you're both parents, or maybe you both went to the same school, or you both are fans of the same, cricket team or whatever, it's like,
Yeah.
boom, you're immediately friends and you can hang out and you have conversations that are deeper now. And again, that's what happens when you put yourself out there. People will connect with you for those things beyond the information that you're providing or what you're
Yeah,
creating.
That's super valuable, and that's so relatable to me personally as well, because I even had these type of objections when I started out. As I mentioned, I had objections like I might not look pretty on camera.
Mm.
English is not our first language, obviously, so that was another part of the hurdle out there. But I was like, if I cannot do it right now, I cannot do it later. It's not even possible.
Yeah,
So yeah,
good for you.
that's so true. Speaking of that, I'm super curious. Like ever since I started following you for the last 3 to 4 years, particularly, I knew about that you were having those income statements, particularly, which
Yep.
was defining all the income, expenses, how things going, and things like that. Like how that idea came along, because it's super rare that I've saw people out there having like so much transparency of defining like what's going on. I saw John Lee Dumas are doing that as well. So tell me about that a little bit, like how that thought came along.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't the first person to do this, but there were a couple reasons why that was important to me to share my income and how much I was making and also how much I was spending. But if you
Yeah,
go into those reports, it's also not just about the numbers. It's why are those the numbers? What happened from the previous month to make it go up? What happened to make it go down, et cetera. And the reason there's two things. Number one, people who are on my website were investing time with me, and that time is very valuable. And I wanted to make sure they knew what the full story was, what was going on. So it was really important for me to just be upfront about the company and what was happening, whether it was going well or not. Similar to, at least in the US, if you invest in a company in the stock market, that company every quarter gives you a report on how the company is doing. Did the funds go up? Did it go down? How is the business health? And so this was
yeah,
my version of that, because people weren't investing money into me, they were investing time. So I wanted to make sure they knew, they can make decisions on whether or not they want to follow me or not based on the actuality of what was happening. But the second part of that was actually when I was still working in architecture, there was a website called My Money Blog, and this website was really fascinating because it talked about retirement income and those kinds of things, retirement plans, planning for the future. But what was really interesting, it was the only website that showed me exactly which funds they were investing in. And I didn't know the
Mm,
person's name or even saw their face, but they showed me their portfolio and the exact amount that it was growing every month and the exact funds that I could invest in too if I wanted to. And I did really well as a result of that. So that was like, oh, like what if I did that in business? Just share where I was putting my time, what I was involved with, how I did keyword research, how much money I was making. Then people can follow suit and make a decision to follow that path if they want to. So I ended up stopping the income reports probably 2016, 2015, because I started to hear from a lot of people that the income reports were just not relatable anymore. And they weren't relatable because the company was doing so well. I mean, it was six figures a month, and it was a little
yeah.
bit out of reach for people. People were saying, "Oh, well, Pat's outgrown me," or this is like for advanced people." Even though it
Mm.
wasn't, they saw those numbers, and I said, "You know what? I'm here to help the beginners, so I'm going to remove that now." But all the other ones that are from the past are definitely still there.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. So, since you talked about all of these things in particular, and when I was introducing you, I was talking about like you have wrote multiple books, you
Mhm.
have, multiple podcasts as well, uh, multiple YouTube channels out there, all things, and multiple projects, as you mentioned, like SwitchPod, which is definitely an amazing tool. I know about that, what it is, like super easy for creators to use that. So many things going on. Like I'm curious to ask like how you actually manage your time, like how things going on, because your Pokemon channel is also like going videos consistently. I was watching one of your videos actually yesterday where you were collecting all of those Pokemon cards with
Yeah.
with your diary and all. So like how you able to like manage your time to get all of these like content machines like consistently going on?
Yeah, well, if you look at everything that I have, you can very easily go, wow, this person is different or they're special or they have like some magic sauce or something. And that's not true. What I have is over a decade worth of building under me that
Yeah,
builds things that can be automated in a way. For example, the switch pod, which took a year and a half of research and building, and that was just in and of itself a fun experiment because it was the first physical product that I came out with, and it's a much different world
yes,
than digital products. But now 1 or 2 hours a month is all I need to be able to manage that business because it runs through Amazon. the inventory and the warehousing. Like, I don't touch the product ever. It goes from China to a warehouse, then gets shipped out automatically using what's called a 3PL, or a third party logistics company. And it just works. And that's the crazy thing with the architecture website, which is still around today, nearly 15 years later. People can come to the website, download those guides, or click on affiliate links. I haven't touched that for 4 or 5 years. It just works. Um, that's kind of what I do. I build something, then try to figure out a way to remove myself from having to be a part of it and still having it continue to run. Right now, the Pokemon channel is definitely pulling a lot of my time because it's very entertainment based and I'm the creator. And so that I am spending a lot of time there. But there are things that I can build on top of that that could potentially become automated if I wanted to create a company to support the Pokemon space, for example. Like, a lot of that stuff I now know how to do. I have the chops for. With Smart Passive Income, which is the largest business I have, um,
Yeah.
it's very automated as much as possible. For example, on Tuesday, that's when I record my podcast, and I record multiple podcasts, so I can get a whole month's worth of podcasts done in one day out of the month, and then the rest of the time I can focus on other things. The team that I've built has also been very important. And we're building products that now can be created once and then continue to work again. For example, like an online course. And now we're building community, and we've hired people to run those communities and be a part of them. So I'm not as needed anymore. And that's the beauty of what we have possible today, is these systems, or or even people, to help you begin to remove yourself from something so you can focus your time elsewhere. And my biggest challenge right now with the extra time I have is to try and not always fill it in with more work. I think that's what ends up happening. We are obsessed with these sort of productivity strategies, and then we get time back only to fill in that time with more things, and then get overwhelmed. So now that I'm a little bit older and things are a little bit more mature, I can get more time back and just relax, or spend more time with
Yeah.
family, or go to the lake to go fishing. And it's hard for me because I see a lot of opportunities to build more, and I have to catch myself sometimes because I don't have to do that. I have a lot of amazing things running, and I can be there when I need to update them or fix them if need be.
Yeah, that's so cool. How you mentioned about like every aspect of your business out there, like how it went along, what it actually took for you. Especially in the people should consider it like it's been like 15, almost like 15 years. It wasn't like early success or like super fast. Like it's a pretty long time, especially in the online space. It's like huge.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's definitely need to be considered. And also like since you have a lot of content based stuff going on, I want to talk about most people get attracted to vanity metrics, and that's
Yeah.
how they go in and define what success of a content looks like. Like what's your thought are if anybody is actually starting out, should they go in and define vanity metrics like, hey, I have to get like 10,000 views, like this and that, in order to define what that content was successful or not? Like, what's your thought around that? People get stuck most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a creator. I don't know her personally, but she has an Instagram of 2.5 million subscribers. That's a lot.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She came out with a t-shirt, like a branded t-shirt to sell to her audience that she built, and she sold 30, just 30 out of
Insane.
2.5 million. So those vanity metrics mean nothing, right? It's the connection you have with the people that mean everything. And it's funny because I know people who have an Instagram of 200 people, and they sell more t-shirts than she does, right? And so again, it's the connection to your audience that is really important. There is a essay that I recommend everybody read. It's called 1,000 True Fans. This was the foundation for my book Superfans. But if you have just 1,000 true fans, like people who love your content, love your work, your creative, your art, your music, whatever it is that you create, 1,000 people times $100 a year. If you imagine them supporting you with $100 a year, that's less than $10 a month. That's a six-figure business already. 1,000 people. So you don't need millions. You don't need a blockbuster hit. You just need to make real connections. And 1,000 people is one person a day for less than 3 years. You can one time a day go out and make somebody feel special and treat them in a way that makes them feel heard and make them feel like they belong, and then bring these people together. And then the cool part two of this is when you have 1,000 true fans, those people are going to talk about you nonstop without you even asking,
Yeah.
and they're going to bring another 1,000 in. They're going to so your vanity metrics that we're all concerned about, the number of subscribers, number of views, etc. They should be used to see how you're trending, but not to decide whether or not you are a success or not. They should be used and understood as a byproduct of how you are affecting an audience, not what the goal is. The goal is to affect the audience. The byproduct are the vanity numbers. So change that focus, and you're going to see that those numbers that you really want are also going to happen. But when you chase the numbers or you chase the dollars, it's always going to end up not good in the end.
Yeah, love it, love it. So cool. That's an amazing point. Well, Pat, first of all, thank you so much for being on the show today out there. Last thing I want to ask is, what are your future plans? What are your future goals? What is in your mind going on right now?
Yeah, thank you. So right now, community is a big part of what SPI has become. For the last 4 or 5 years, it was online courses, DIY, do it yourself online courses. But we found that there are so many more opportunities to help people through that content better. And so instead of selling you a course about podcasting, for example, you could join what we call our all access pass, where you get access to not just the one course, but all the courses and the next step and the next step and the next step. And you get access to a community and accountability from our team, because studies show that when you have accountability and other people kind of guiding you through a process, you're 95% more likely to finish something. So
Yeah,
we built those
100%.
systems now. Exactly. So we're changing our business model. We just launched the all access pass, and now we're no longer considered selling online courses. We're selling community powered courses, right? Community is our product now. And I feel like that, again, to my point with 1,000 true fans, if you can really help people directly and have conversations with them, that guides everything. And then you don't have to guess anymore, because it's all based on what your audience wants. And that's what I'm really excited about, because a lot of the benefit is not just me and my team and even the information, it's the connection that people have to other people like them. People want to find other people who speak the same language, and we found so much success with the tests that we've done with our community, and now we're going wide with it.
Awesome, awesome. So, if people who might be super interested out there to be the part of that, like-minded community, driven by you and your team out there, is that open? If yes, the way people can go and join that.
Oh, thank you, RJ. Like, I appreciate that. I'm not here to sell to your audience, but if you want to check that out and just see what it's like, smartpassiveincome.com/all access. And then you'll see kind of what we're trying to build there, and how we're trying to really become an example for other creators too, in that way. Thank you, RJ.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So what I will do is I will post up the link in the description down below. Also, I will post up all the other social media links of Pat, including his Pokemon channel, his podcast, his books. Because you guys, like, if you're planning to start your own podcast, I talk about this stuff a lot, but you have to learn a lot of things from Pat as well. I've mentioned this earlier. Whenever I search about anything that I have in my mind going on, I go on YouTube and I found Pat's videos going on, and I watch those videos. Like, it gives me most of these answers out there which I actually need. So I will post up
Thank you.
all of the links in the show notes and in the description down below. Well, Pat, thank you so much once again to be on the show. Any last thing that you want to say before we round the show up?
Yeah, just don't worry about being perfect. That's the other thing that stops a lot of people. Like, give yourself permission to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are great because you can learn from them and then pivot and move forward in the right direction. I think the biggest mistake is an ultimate failure is just thinking you're not good enough and quitting. But you can always keep going, keep getting up, keep learning from those mistakes, and just give yourself some grace. It's okay to make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes too. I recorded 4 podcast episodes 2 weeks ago with the wrong microphone input, and I'm just going to leave it. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as
Yeah.
as long as the people know you're there to help them and serve them, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. And I'm definitely going to see you guys with another amazing guest next week. Until then, peace out.